Disrespect rarely arrives as an attack. It slips in through tone, delay, dismissal. You feel the shift in the room. Muscles tighten. The impulse to react rises fast. Most men obey it without thought and lose control in the very moment they believe they are defending it. That tension is not a flaw. It is a signal. There is a way to handle disrespect that leaves no noise, no escalation, no weakness. Only silence that settles everything. Lesson 1. The first truth about the Stoic way to handle disrespect is simple. Most men do not recognize disrespect when it first appears. They only recognize the surge in their chest after it lands. A delayed reply, a smirk, a sentence spoken over them, a decision made without their input. The room changes temperature and they feel it. The instinct is immediate. Correct it, confront it, defend status, restore balance. Yet the moment they move on that impulse, they hand control to the very force that tested them. Disrespect becomes the director. They become the actor. This is where most images collapse. The Stoic response begins earlier, before words, before movement, before expression. It begins in noticing the moment the shift happens, noticing the body preparing for reaction, noticing the mind writing a story about offense. That pause is not hesitation. It is sovereignty. The man who sees the impulse before obeying it cannot be steered by another's tone. He has already stepped outside the trap. He does not need to announce this. He simply stands there, aware, unreadable. This is why noise follows weakness. Raised voices, fast explanations, sharp retorts, defensive laughter. Each is a confession that something landed too deep. The other person learns quickly. Press here, and movement appears. Disrespect feeds on predictability. If every provocation produces a visible reaction, the pattern is confirmed. The frame is set. One leads, one follows. Silence changes this equation. Not the silence of fear, not the silence of retreat, the silence of measured delay. A breath taken without display, eyes steady, posture unchanged, no rush to fill the space. The other person is left holding their own behavior, waiting for a response that does not arrive on schedule. This small fracture in expectation is where dominance quietly returns. No threat, no performance, no argument. Only time stretching long enough to make them aware of themselves. A man practicing this will notice how quickly the world reveals its insecurities. Some will repeat themselves louder. Some will laugh to soften their own edge. Some will look away. The situation resolves itself without a single word being thrown like a stone. This is how disrespect is silenced, not battled. The absence of reaction becomes the message. Silence is not absence. It is selection. This does not mean passivity. It means choice. When words finally come, they arrive without heat, few, precise, free of the tremor of needing to prove anything. Or they do not come at all because no correction is needed. The other person has already adjusted. The frame has already been set. The moment has already been owned. Most will never practice this. They prefer the quick relief of emotional discharge. They prefer to feel powerful for a second, even if it costs them authority for years. The Stoic path demands restraint, where reaction would be easier. That is why it works. It removes the fuel before the fire begins. And once a man has learned to watch the spark without striking it, every room he enters grows quieter around him, whether he speaks or not. Lesson 2. The second truth in the Stoic way to handle disrespect is uncomfortable for most men. Emotional reactions do not defend your image. They advertise its fragility. The raised voice, the sharp reply, the quick correction, the visible irritation. Each one tells the room that your stability depends on how others treat you. The more force you apply, the more obvious the weakness becomes. This is why disrespect often returns stronger after a confrontation. You taught others exactly where to press. Most men believe reacting is strength. They believe showing that something bothered them will discourage future attempts. Reality moves in the opposite direction. People test what moves. If a small provocation produces a visible response, the lesson is learned. You are governable. Your mood can be steered. Your behavior can be predicted. The one who provoked you now owns a quiet map of your nervous system. The Stoic approach reverses this. You allow the moment to pass through you without granting it possession. The body wants to tighten. The mind wants to compose a reply. You let both arise and fade without obedience. Nothing leaks outward. No twitch of urgency. No rush to restore dignity. This is not suppression. It is mastery. The emotion is acknowledged privately, but denied authority publicly. Consider a meeting where your idea is dismissed with a wave of the hand. The ordinary response appears instantly. Lean forward, speak faster, defend the point, justify your competence. The room watches your need. Even if your argument wins, your frame loses. You have shown that approval is currency to you. The Stoic response is slower. A pause, a neutral gaze, a note taken calmly. No defense, no explanation. When you finally speak again, it is measured, detached from the earlier slight. The disrespect finds no target. It dissolves into irrelevance. Another scene. A friend makes a cutting remark in public. Laughter follows. The easy reaction is to return the cut or retreat into forced humor. Both concede control. The Stoic does neither. He allows the laughter to exist without chasing it. His expression does not shift. The silence after the joke stretches just long enough. The group feels the imbalance. The friend becomes aware of himself. No confrontation was needed. No escalation occurred. The disrespect collapses under its own exposure. Men fear that not reacting makes them appear weak, yet weakness is dependence. If your dignity requires constant defense, it is not dignity. It is negotiation. The Stoic understands that status is not built in moments of retaliation. It is built in moments where retaliation was possible but unnecessary. The room senses this difference instinctively. They adjust around it without being told. Noise is always a request for attention, for validation, for control. When you refuse to supply it, you step out of the game being played and force a new one. The other person either rises to your level of restraint or reveals their lack of it. In both cases, your position strengthens without effort. Control is not in the reaction. It is in the refusal to be pulled. This discipline is not comfortable. The body wants release. The mind wants resolution. But each moment you resist the urge to perform your indignation, you teach yourself a deeper authority. The disrespect that once felt sharp now feels distant, not because it stopped happening, but because it stopped reaching your center. The room still speaks. The world still tests. Yet inside, the response has already been chosen before the provocation even arrives. Lesson 3. The third truth is where most men fail without realizing it. They confuse silence with submission. They believe that if they do not answer disrespect immediately, they have accepted it. So they speak too fast, too loud, too much. They rush to show that they noticed. They rush to show they are not passive. And in doing so, they surrender the very leverage they were trying to protect. Silence is not surrender. Silence is space. Space to observe, space to decide, space to make the other person sit with what they just did. Submission is shrinking. Silence is standing still, the body upright, the breath slow, the eyes clear. No retreat, no advance, just presence. This is why controlled silence feels heavier than argument. It gives nothing to push against. Picture a man in a crowded room. Someone cuts in front of him, disregarding his place. The ordinary response is a sharp word, a shoulder check, a visible irritation. The Stoic response is simpler. He allows the person to pass. He does not chase the moment. He does not announce his displeasure. But when space opens again, he repositions himself with calm certainty, reclaiming what was his without explanation. No grudge, no story, no noise. The other person learns a quiet lesson. This man cannot be hurried, baited, or thrown off balance. Another moment. A partner dismisses your opinion with a tired sigh. The impulse is to argue, to demand recognition, to force seriousness. The Stoic remains still. He lets the sigh land and fade. He continues his action unhurried. Later, when he speaks, he states his position once, clearly, without heat. If it is ignored again, he does not repeat it. He adjusts his actions instead. He becomes less available where he is not respected. No threat is spoken. The boundary is felt. Silence carried the message. Submission seeks acceptance. Silence seeks clarity. One collapses inward. The other expands outward without movement. People sense this difference. They lean toward what is solid. They disregard what is needy. The man who speaks only when necessary gains weight in every room he enters. His words become rare. Rarity creates value. Value creates attention. Attention discourages casual disrespect. Most men fill every gap with explanation. They narrate their intentions. They defend their choices. They chase understanding. The Stoic does not. He lets misunderstanding exist. He lets others wonder. Wonder creates respect more reliably than forced clarity. A man who does not rush to correct every perception appears larger than the perceptions themselves. Silence is not the absence of action. It is action without noise. This is the discipline. To allow a moment to pass without seizing it, to let the world reveal itself before you shape it, to understand that not every slight requires correction, and that correction delivered too fast is obedience in disguise. When silence becomes natural, disrespect loses its urgency. It may still appear, but it no longer commands your tempo, and whoever controls the tempo quietly controls the room. Lesson 4. The fourth truth in the Stoic way to handle disrespect is this: presence speaks louder than argument. Most men try to win respect through words. They explain themselves. They justify their choices. They announce their boundaries. They describe who they are and what they deserve. This turns dignity into a request. A man who must state his value is negotiating it. Controlled presence requires no negotiation. It is built in how you enter a room, how you sit, how long you take before responding, how little you need to adjust when others shift around you. Presence is weight. Weight bends the environment without force. A man with no weight must push to be seen. A man with weight does nothing and is already considered. Disrespect often appears as a test of this weight. Someone interrupts you, looks past you, changes the subject while you speak. The common reaction is to raise intensity, speak faster, speak sharper, reclaim the floor. But this only confirms that the floor can be taken from you. The Stoic approach is quieter. When interrupted, he stops speaking. Not mid-sentence out of surprise, but deliberately. He looks at the interrupter, says nothing, waits. The room notices the rupture. The interrupter feels it. They either stop or continue alone. Either outcome exposes them. No argument needed. In another setting, someone speaks about you as if you are not there. The instinct is to insert yourself, to correct, to defend. The Stoic remains still. He listens. He lets the conversation play out. Later, he addresses only what matters, in few words, without referencing the disrespect directly. Or he chooses not to address it at all because he understands something more important. People reveal their position through behavior. He does not need to fight for a seat. He simply takes it when he decides to move. Presence is also built through scarcity of reaction. The man who reacts to everything is predictable. The man who reacts rarely becomes significant. When he finally does speak, attention sharpens. Not because he demanded it, but because he trained the environment to listen. Some will interpret this as coldness. Let them. Warmth that requires constant display is dependency. The Stoic's warmth is selective. When he chooses to engage, it is felt. When he chooses to remain silent, it is also felt. Either way, he is the one choosing. Authority does not come from proving you are right. It comes from showing you do not need to prove yourself. This is why controlled presence silences disrespect. It denies the other person the reaction they expected. It denies them the narrative where they are central and you are responding. Instead, they become a passing event in your field of awareness. They either rise to match your steadiness or they drift out of relevance. To cultivate this, a man must be willing to endure small discomforts without resolution, to let awkwardness hang, to let tension exist, to let others sit with their own behavior. This is not cruelty. It is clarity. It reveals who in the room is stable and who requires friction to feel alive. Once presence is established, disrespect becomes rare. Not because people have become kinder, but because they sense no reward in attempting it. The man is already where he is, unmoved, unhurried, unclaimed. Lesson 5. The fifth truth is a matter of timing. Most men speak too soon. They answer before the moment has ripened. They rush to resolve tension, to explain, to correct, to defend. Speed feels like control. In reality, speed is obedience. You are moving on a tempo set by someone else's provocation. The Stoic way to handle disrespect is to own the pause, to let a moment breathe longer than is comfortable. When someone throws a remark meant to sting, they expect an immediate shift. A flinch, a counter, a laugh, a withdrawal, anything that confirms impact. The Stoic offers none of these. He stays still long enough that the energy of the remark has nowhere to go. It turns back toward its source. Consider a workplace exchange. A colleague dismisses your contribution with a casual, "That's not really relevant." The ordinary response appears quickly. You clarify, you justify, you try to prove relevance, you enter their frame. The Stoic response is slower. He looks at the colleague, takes a breath, says nothing, lets the statement settle in the air. Then, without urgency, he asks a simple question. What outcome are we aiming for here? The topic shifts. The dismissal loses its target. He never defended himself. He redirected the field. Another situation. Someone uses sarcasm toward you in front of others. The easy reply is sarcasm, back, laughter, or visible irritation. The Stoic response is a brief stillness, eyes resting on the speaker. A pause, long enough to make the sarcasm feel exposed. Then a neutral continuation of the conversation, as if the remark was a minor weather event. The speaker is left with their own echo. The group notices who needed to perform and who did not. Timing also means knowing when words are necessary. Silence is not a permanent posture. It is a gate. You open it when speech will shape the field. You keep it closed when speech would feed the fire. The Stoic does not speak to relieve his own tension. He speaks to set direction. If a sentence does not change anything, he does not waste it. This discipline creates a reputation. People begin to feel that provoking you is unrewarding. There is no dramatic payoff, no spectacle, no escalation. They may still disagree with you. They may still test you. But they learn that tests do not produce entertainment. And what produces no entertainment is rarely repeated. Power is not in speaking last. It is in speaking only when it matters. This approach also turns inward. When you own the pause externally, you begin to own it internally. A thought appears, an impulse to justify, a story about being disrespected. You watch it arise and fade. You do not build a palace out of a moment. You let it pass through. This internal timing mirrors the external one. The world slows around a man who is no longer in a hurry to repair his image. Many fear that if they do not answer quickly, they will lose the moment. In truth, most moments are traps. They invite you to act small, to argue, to posture, to chase a victory that costs more than it gives. The Stoic learns to let most invitations expire unopened. When timing becomes your ally, disrespect loses its urgency. It becomes just another sound in a room you do not need to fill. You decide when the room hears you. You decide when it does not. And slowly, others adjust their behavior to your rhythm without a single command being spoken. Lesson 6. The sixth truth is written in the body long before it is understood in the mind. Posture and timing shape power dynamics more than words ever will. Most men try to handle disrespect with arguments, explanations, or clever lines. They forget that the room reads the body first. Shoulders that tighten, hands that fidget, a head that tilts in appeasement, feet that shift. These are confessions. They tell others that your center has been touched. The Stoic response begins below language. When disrespect appears, the body remains unchanged. Shoulders stay relaxed, breath stays low, jaw stays loose, eyes stay steady. There is no collapse and no inflation, no leaning forward to fight, no leaning back to retreat, just grounded presence. The body becomes a statement that requires no translation. Imagine a conversation where someone tries to dominate the exchange. They speak over you, louder, faster. The ordinary reaction is to raise volume, speak faster, compete. This is how two unstable centers collide. The Stoic does not match pace. He slows it. He lets the other finish. He answers slower than expected, softer than expected, with fewer words than expected. The contrast unsettles the dynamic. The aggressor finds no rhythm to ride. The tempo shifts. The power realigns without conflict. Another setting, a superior tries to belittle you with a condescending tone. The reflex is to shrink or to bristle. Both are visible losses. The Stoic keeps posture unchanged. He listens without nodding excessively. He does not smile to please. He does not frown to protest. He absorbs the tone without letting it rewrite his stance. When he speaks, his voice is even. Not cold, not warm, just exact. The superior senses no submission and no rebellion, only solidity. Disrespect finds no foothold. This is why timing matters as much as posture. A quick reply often comes from a nervous body. A delayed reply comes from a body at ease. The Stoic uses this. He does not answer while the impulse is hot. He waits until the body has returned to baseline. Then the words carry weight, because they are not fueled by reactivity. They arrive clean. There is a quiet violence in stillness that most do not understand. Not violence of harm, but of impact. A still man in a chaotic moment becomes the reference point. Eyes drift toward him. Voices adjust around him. Tension organizes itself in relation to him. He has not asserted dominance. He has simply refused to participate in instability. The body never lies. Words often do. To train this, a man must pay attention to small moments. How he stands in a line, how he sits when waiting, how he listens when bored. These mundane postures become the foundation of how he handles larger tests. Disrespect in public is only a louder version of impatience in private. If you cannot remain composed while nothing happens, you will not remain composed when something does. Over time, this creates an unmistakable signal. You are not easily moved, not easily hurried, not easily offended. People adjust their approach. They choose words more carefully. They test less often. And when they do test, they meet a body that does not speak their language of agitation. The Stoic does not fight for dominance. He embodies it. Lesson 7. The seventh truth in the Stoic way to handle disrespect is this: the man who seeks validation is already disrespected. He just hasn't noticed yet. Disrespect does not begin when someone cuts you off or dismisses you. It begins the moment you need others to confirm your standing. From that moment on, every interaction becomes a negotiation. Every tone becomes a verdict. Every expression becomes a signal you must interpret. You are no longer acting. You are reacting. Most men live here. They enter rooms scanning faces. They measure respect through attention. They adjust their speech to maintain approval. When a slight appears, they feel urgency because the slight threatens something they were never meant to outsource: their sense of position, their certainty of self, their internal anchor. Without it, they drift, and drifting men are easy to push. The Stoic does not chase validation. He does not demand recognition. He does not need agreement to remain steady. This is why disrespect loses power in his presence. There is nothing to take from him, no image to defend, no reputation to salvage in real time. He does not give others the responsibility of confirming his worth, so they cannot threaten it. Picture a gathering where status games are being played quietly. Compliments are traded like currency. Jabs are delivered with smiles. Everyone is managing how they are seen. The Stoic participates only when he chooses. He does not overlaugh. He does not overshare. He does not over-explain. When a joke is made at his expense, he does not rush to show he can take it. He simply decides whether it deserves response. If it does not, it passes. If it does, the response is brief, clean, final. No performance, no chase. In another scene, a man seeks to impress by speaking over others, showing knowledge, correcting details. Many feel diminished and attempt to regain ground. The Stoic does not compete. He lets the display run its course. He does not interrupt the performance of ego. When silence returns, if something needs to be said, he says it plainly. If not, he remains quiet. He is not fighting for the spotlight. This alone sets him apart from everyone orbiting it. Validation-seeking always reveals itself in excess. Too many words, too much energy, too much explanation, too many emotional cues. The Stoic response is subtraction. Fewer words, smaller movements, slower rhythm. This minimalism creates gravity. People feel it without understanding it. They sense that you are not playing the same game, and they adjust. Self-respect that depends on others is not self-respect. It is a contract. This is why the Stoic path feels lonely at first. Without the constant exchange of approval, the social environment feels colder. But in that cold, something solid forms. An internal structure that does not shake when a comment lands. An internal certainty that does not rise when praised, nor fall when dismissed. From there, disrespect is no longer a wound. It is data. Information about the other person's state, not your own. The world is full of men trying to be seen. Few choose to simply be. The first group is always vulnerable to disrespect. The second group becomes difficult to target, not because they are aggressive, but because there is nothing to hook into. When you stop chasing validation, you step out of the arena where disrespect is even possible, and what remains is a quiet space where your presence is enough, whether noticed or not. Lesson 8. The eighth truth is subtle. Disrespect only becomes a wound when you decide it is about you. Most men take every slight personally. Every interruption is an insult. Every dismissive tone is an attack. Every delay in response is rejection. They build an entire inner narrative around the event. They replay it. They imagine motives. They construct arguments they never spoke. By the time they reach home, the original moment has grown into a private war. The Stoic handles disrespect differently. He turns it into a mirror. Not a mirror that reflects his value, but a mirror that reflects the other person's state, their impatience, their insecurity, their hunger for dominance, their lack of awareness, their internal noise. He does not excuse the behavior. He simply locates its origin outside himself. Once this is done, the sting is gone. There is nothing to defend because nothing was taken. A man speaks sharply to you in traffic, cuts you off, gestures. The ordinary response is anger, pursuit, a raised voice through glass. The Stoic notes the behavior. He does not escalate. He sees a stranger carrying tension they cannot contain. He lets them pass physically and mentally. The event ends in seconds. No story follows him home. A colleague ignores your message but replies quickly to others. The ordinary mind constructs meaning, disrespect, exclusion, undervaluing. The Stoic sees a pattern of priorities, not a verdict on his worth. He adjusts his future communication accordingly. Less availability, fewer unnecessary messages. The boundary is set silently. No resentment, no confrontation. Just calibration. This shift is critical. When you make disrespect about you, you carry it forward. When you make it about the other, you learn from it and release it. One path produces bitterness, the other produces clarity. A bitter man is easy to provoke again. A clear man is not. People will test you unconsciously. They test everyone. They push small boundaries to see what moves. If you take every test personally, you live in constant defense. If you see tests as information, you remain free. You gather data. Who interrupts? Who listens? Who dismisses? Who respects silence? You do not label them enemies. You simply see where they stand. Disrespect is not always malicious. Often it is careless. Often it is habitual. Often it is born from their own unresolved tension. When you understand this, your response becomes precise. You do not overreact to minor events. You do not underreact to serious ones. You respond to reality, not imagination. What you do not personalize, you control. This does not mean tolerating repeated boundary violations. It means addressing them without heat, without narrative, without drama. If someone consistently disrespects you, the Stoic does not argue. He reduces access. He withdraws attention. He changes proximity. He leaves situations where his presence is not valued. No announcement is needed. The message is delivered through action. Most men talk about respect endlessly. They demand it. They complain about its absence. They post about it. The Stoic does none of this. He observes. He adjusts. He allocates his time and presence where it is met with steadiness. Where it is not, he becomes less available. Over time, this shapes his environment. The people around him learn that casual disrespect results in quiet distance, not confrontation. And distance is often the only lesson some understand. When you stop making disrespect personal, you stop being its prisoner. It may still appear, but it no longer defines your mood, your day, or your identity. It becomes a brief event in a life governed by something deeper than impulse. Lesson 9. The ninth truth is where most men hesitate. Setting boundaries without raising your voice feels unnatural in a world that associates force with effectiveness. Many believe that if they do not express displeasure loudly, clearly, emotionally, they will be ignored. So, they escalate. They sharpen tone, they repeat themselves. They display frustration as evidence of seriousness. Yet, this teaches others that your limits require emotional proof, that without noise, they do not exist. The Stoic sets boundaries through certainty, not volume. He does not announce his line in the sand, he lives it. When a boundary is crossed, he does not rush to correct. He adjusts his behavior. He removes access. He withholds engagement. He changes the structure of the interaction. The other person feels the consequence without being handed a lecture. A friend repeatedly arrives late. The ordinary response is complaint, guilt-tripping, confrontation. The Stoic says nothing the first time, nothing the second. On the third, he begins the meeting without them. He orders. He starts the activity. When they arrive, there is no explanation, no sarcasm, no reprimand, only a simple continuation of what is already in motion. They learn that his time is not waiting to be validated. The boundary has been set without a single emotional word. A co-worker speaks to you with condescension. The ordinary response is to push back verbally or to swallow resentment. The Stoic chooses neither. He shortens his replies. He removes unnecessary warmth. He offers information only when required. He becomes precise and minimal. The co-worker senses the shift. They either adjust their tone or lose access to your attention. The boundary is enforced silently. This method requires inner stability. A man must tolerate the discomfort of not explaining himself. He must resist the urge to be understood. He must allow others to feel the consequence of their behavior without rescuing them from it. Most cannot. They explain, they justify, they negotiate their own limits, and every negotiation weakens the line. A boundary spoken with emotion invites argument. A boundary lived through action invites reflection. This is also how long-term respect is built. People do not remember the speech you gave about how you expect to be treated. They remember how you behaved when treatment was lacking. Did you collapse? Did you explode? Or did you adjust calmly and continue? Over time, patterns form. The Stoic becomes known as someone whose presence is steady, whose engagement is selective, whose withdrawal is quiet but final. This reputation travels faster than any demand for respect. There will be moments when words are required, when clarity prevents confusion, when directness saves time. The Stoic uses these words sparingly, without heat, without accusation, without emotional pressure, a simple statement. I don't accept that tone. Then nothing more, no explanation, no justification. The sentence stands. If the behavior continues, he acts. If it stops, he proceeds. Either way, the boundary is real. Men who cannot do this live in cycles of conflict and appeasement. They argue, they forgive, they argue again, they explain again. The pattern becomes their identity. The Stoic exits this cycle, not dramatically, quietly, firmly, permanently. When you learn to set boundaries without raising your voice, you discover something rare. Most people are not looking to fight. They are looking to see where the structure is. If you provide it without noise, they relax. If you do not provide it, they will keep testing. The Stoic simply gives the answer once, through behavior, and the testing stops. I've completed Lesson 9. I'm stopped now as required. Awaiting your approval to proceed to the final lesson. Lesson 10. The final truth is slow. It cannot be seen in a single exchange. It reveals itself over months, sometimes years. The Stoic way to handle disrespect is not a tactic. It is a reputation formed by disciplined responses repeated until they become your signature. Most men try to win respect in moments. The Stoic understands respect is built in patterns. Every time you refuse to react impulsively, a brick is laid. Every time you choose silence over performance, another. Every time you set a boundary through action instead of argument, another. At first, no one notices. Then one day, a situation arises. A tense room, a subtle provocation. Eyes turn toward you, not because you demanded attention, but because experience has taught them something. When you move, it matters. When you speak, it matters. When you remain silent, it matters. This is the long-term effect of disciplined responses. You no longer need to handle disrespect. Disrespect handles itself around you. Consider two men over a decade. One reacts quickly, defends often, jokes to soften, explains to be understood, confronts to feel strong. He is familiar, expressive, human in the ordinary sense. People feel free to test him. They know what they will get. His environment stays noisy. Respect comes and goes depending on mood. The other man practices restraint. He does not explain his intentions unless necessary. He does not argue every slight. He does not fill every silence. He is not cold, but he is contained. Over years, people learn to approach him differently. They speak more carefully. They interrupt less. They assume he does not need to prove anything. His environment grows quieter, not by command, but by adaptation. This difference compounds. In tense situations, one is expected to react. The other is expected to observe. Expectation is power. When a room expects your stability, instability around you feels out of place. Others correct themselves before you ever need to. A man who must insist on respect is rarely respected. A man whose presence quietly commands it never needs to insist. This long arc also reshapes your inner life. Disrespect no longer follows you home. It does not echo in your thoughts at night. It does not fuel imagined conversations in the shower. It does not infect your next interaction. You become difficult to haunt. This is freedom most never experience. They live in constant mental replay. The Stoic lives in real time. None of this is dramatic. No single victory, no single confrontation, no viral moment. Just steady accumulation. 1,000 small refusals to be pulled off center, 1,000 small choices to respond instead of react, 1,000 small silences that taught others how to behave around you. This is why the path is rare. It offers no instant payoff. It demands discomfort without applause. It requires letting others misunderstand you in the short term to be understood in the long term. Few accept this trade. They want immediate relief, immediate dominance, immediate recognition. They get noise instead of authority. In the end, disrespect does not vanish from the world. People remain careless, insecure, competitive, blind. The difference is that it no longer reaches you. It touches the outer edge and falls away, not because you are hardened, but because you are centered. The Stoic way to handle disrespect is not about silencing others. It is about becoming so stable that disrespect has nowhere to land.